Drama awaits, only on Echoes of Love. The adventure begins with Kasuda and an elderly woman named Min, who divided her house with great care and strictness. There were the colors blue, yellow, and red, those were the borderlines. This puzzled the new student who was going to live with her, as he needed to know his limits and not cross them. She simply couldn't tolerate dealing with people and could barely stand having them around. The blue area was his personal space that he could use freely. The red one was off limits. If he crossed it, he would be punished. The yellow area was neutral territory that both could use. He entered the house thinking to himself, "Oh my! Am I awake or dreaming? How can a house be split in half? Even the fridge and the stove are divided. Each person has their own side." At first, everything seemed fine, and he thought he could adapt to this situation, until she shocked him by saying that using her bathroom was forbidden, and if he ever needed to go, he had to visit the cafe instead. He stared at her in disbelief, but he had no choice but to agree, since he had nowhere else to stay, especially because the house was close to the university where he studied. He was part of a free housing program that paired students with elderly residents. Later, he started studying and visiting his well-off friend, who mocked him, saying, "And what will you do if you need to use the bathroom at midnight? Go to the cafe? Find another place to live, every furnished apartment is full of students." He replied, "Do you think I have the money to rent one? I barely found this program, so I accepted it." Then he began working to support himself. He cleaned apartments belonging to families who had lost someone, alongside his friend, who was just as poor as he was. Though the work was exhausting and unpleasant, they never refused any task, no matter how little the pay. They would return home every night completely worn out. Before his friend left one evening, he asked about a woman named Min. His friend replied that he hadn't seen her in a long time and warned him, "Be careful with her, and never lend her money. She spends it on useless things and never pays it back." After all that, Kasuda went home to rest. But the next morning, the old woman stood before him like a drill sergeant and said, "What's that smell? Today is cleaning day. I'll help you." She made him clean his section of the house. Since he always ate from street food stalls, he had to go to the cafe every time he needed the bathroom. While cleaning, she took pity on him and invited him to have breakfast with her. She asked where he usually ate, and he said, "At the cafe or at a small restaurant." "Where else?" She said, "That street food will ruin your health. Listen, I'll take care of your meals, but you'll pay me $5 per meal. I'll give you the first one for free." But the problem was that the old woman didn't actually buy food. The community association she lived under provided her meals for free. She would trick them into giving her 2 portions, one for herself and another under the pretense that it was for a friend. Then she'd put them into plastic containers and sell one to Kasuda for $5. On top of that, she often visited clinics to get free medicine, even though she was perfectly healthy. She would fake illnesses just to receive free treatment. She was a woman who exploited every free resource and sought benefit wherever she could find it. One day, Kasuda planned to go to the movies with his friend. But then, a girl called him and asked if he could take care of her dog while she visited her mother. She had no one else to leave it with. Since he didn't know how to say no, he agreed, forgetting that he wasn't allowed to keep a dog in the house. His friend teased him, saying, "Are you insane? You know the old woman will never let you bring a dog into the house. She barely lets you stay there yourself." But Kasuda went anyway and took the dog. The girl was beautiful, and he simply couldn't refuse her. He spent the day with the dog, and at night, he tried to sneak it inside without the old woman noticing, but the dog started barking on the stairs, exposing him. As soon as she opened the door and saw the dog, she slammed it shut in his face, shouting, "Get out! Find somewhere else to sleep." But he didn't lose hope. He had promised the girl to keep the dog for only 3 days until she returned. The old woman yelled, "Do you plan to carry everyone's burdens? That's why you'll always be miserable. Think about yourself for once and stay out of other people's problems." After all her shouting, she finally agreed to let the dog stay, but said, "I'll be watching you closely. And in return, you'll pay me." He said, "Fine, I'll pay." Then he went out to buy dog food and asked her to look after the dog while he was gone, saying, This is what he eats, and this isn't. He sits here and doesn't go there. She looked at him in irritation. She was already tired of both of them. She spent the whole day locked in her room, leaving him and the dog in the living room. But in the evening, her heart softened and she brought them some food. One night, when Kasuda returned from work to care for the dog, he saw the old woman strolling with a man from the neighborhood. They looked like grandmother and grandson, laughing and talking warmly. He thought to himself, wow, I must be the only one cursed with this old woman. I can't even eat my food in peace. He went back home and started playing with the dog, feeling, for the first time, a bit of joy inside that gloomy house. The next day, he went to work and left the dog with her. She began to grow fond of it, letting it rest in her lap during the day. In the evening, they would go out walking together, the dog following her. She looked at him and said, I've gotten used to having you around. I can't stand being apart from you anymore. I feel like I've left you everywhere I go. When the 3 days finally passed, he went to return the dog to its owner. Strangely, the old woman was deeply moved and told him, even though you have nothing, I don't want you to leave. I've gotten used to having you here. But he left with the girl, and as soon as he did, the old woman sat alone, sad and lost, not knowing what to do. Kasuda met the girl again and explained to her how to take care of the dog, especially since it was her first time owning a pet. She admired his thoughtfulness and said, if I have any trouble, I'll call you. When are you usually free? He replied, I'm always free. Call me anytime. One day, when she wanted to take her dog for a walk, she sent him a message. As soon as he saw it, he was overjoyed. He liked her but was too shy to admit it. Then he remembered he should fix his appearance, so he began combing his hair for the first time in ages. His sarcastic friend, as usual, left him alone, but this time, he was determined to go with him after seeing him actually styling his hair for the first time in a very long while. He wanted to know who would dare take responsibility for evicting her at that moment. As for Min, she was sitting in a cafe reading the newspaper before heading home to change her clothes and go to work. At first, everyone thought she worked for a respectable company or rented out rooms, but we soon discovered the truth. She was just a poor woman who collected cardboard from the streets. While she was working one day, she saw a strange man gathering cardboard in the same area. She marched up to him, grabbed him by the ear, and said, this area is mine. If you ever come back here again, you'll be picking your teeth up off the ground. The man, startled, replied, good heavens, I just found this cardboard lying on the ground. I didn't know it belonged to you. She snapped back, everything on the ground is mine, and even what's in the sky, I have a share of it. Get out of here, and don't let me see you again. Then she took the cardboard he had collected and sold it that evening. After a long, exhausting day, the buyer handed her only 2 dirhams. That night, when she returned home, she found her friend sitting alone in the garden and joined her. Her friend began complaining about her son, who no longer cared for her. She said, it's been such a long time since he last showed any concern for me. Just last week, I was sick and called him to accompany me to the doctor. A little while later, I heard knocking at the door and thought he had come to see me, but it was only the paramedics I had called myself. He didn't even bother to visit. Min replied, and what do you want from him? You have enough money, you don't need anyone, not even to go to work. Her friend shot back sharply, you never like anything, do you? I can't stand your constant complaining. I have no one to care for me or support me. And I was watching this scene from afar, until I saw my friend standing in front of her, and he said to him, relax, I don't have a single cent to lend you. The other replied, no, I didn't come to borrow money. I just came to see you. But it's late, and I have nowhere to sleep, so I came to stay with you tonight. His friend said sarcastically, are you insane? You want to spend the night at that old woman's place? She barely lets you stay there yourself. Her bathroom is like a military zone. But then the friend got a wicked idea and said, we'll sneak in quietly without her noticing and stay till morning. In the morning, before the old woman woke up, she found them both sitting in the living room as if nothing had happened. His friend, unable to refuse, said, welcome, but I don't have an extra mattress. That night, the friend went to use the bathroom, but disaster struck when the old woman woke up at that very moment to use it herself. She found him inside, and as soon as she saw him, she screamed at the top of her lungs. "Someone's in my bathroom! Get out of my house, you thieves!" She kicked them both out on the spot. His friend went off searching for somewhere to sleep and borrowed some money, while Kasuda went back to beg her for forgiveness. He thought the issue would be resolved easily, but she kept screaming. "You brought a vagrant here to rob me, didn't you? I'm calling the police right now." And indeed, the police arrived. When they assessed the situation, Kasuda began defending his friend, saying, "He's been my friend since childhood. He had nowhere to stay, so he came with me. There was no bad intention, he just entered the bathroom by accident." But the old woman wouldn't calm down and shouted sternly, "You have 2 days to leave this house. If you're still here after that, I'll call the police again." Anger flared in his chest. He lost control and shouted, "You won't drive me out, not even from paradise itself. I can't eat or drink in this house, or even use the bathroom. No one could tolerate you for more than 3 minutes." The next morning, he left the house and went to the cafe, sitting alone, thinking about what he should do and where he could sleep that night. By evening, heavy rain began to fall, and strong winds blew. He had no shelter, no roof over his head. The cold was bitter, and death from frostbite felt dangerously close. At that very moment, the old woman was pushing her cart full of cardboard through the rain when it all tumbled out and got soaked. A man in a car pulled up and shouted arrogantly, "Move out of the way. I'm in a hurry." Then he shoved her hard, and she fell to the ground. By coincidence, Kasuda happened to be passing by and saw the scene unfold before his eyes. He couldn't stand it, he lunged at the man and began hitting him fiercely. One blow from him, one blow from the other, until the police arrived and arrested them both. At the station, the officer asked to see their records. When they learned Kasuda was a student, they asked if he had any family member who could vouch for him and get him released, but he remained silent. After checking his file, the officer discovered that he was an orphan. That's when the old woman truly softened. She stepped forward and said to the officer, "He lives with me. I'll take responsibility for him." She gave him her address to secure his release. Everyone thought she was his grandmother, and the officer, moved by the situation, said to the man who had pushed her, "That's her grandson, and he had every right to defend her. If I were in his place, I'd have buried you instead of just hitting you." That evening, when they returned home, Min prepared food for him and tried to make peace. They both apologized for the misunderstanding, and at last, they reconciled. The next day, he went to work with his friend and told him what had happened. His friend said, "Why didn't you call me to help you? Didn't I tell you not to trust her? Why did you lend her money? She'll never return it." After finishing work, they went to the restaurant where they usually had dinner and reminisced about their days in the orphanage, how they used to envy those who had parents. When he later said goodbye to his friend, he bought a gift for the old woman. When she opened it, she was overjoyed. It was a nutritional supplement, something she badly needed since she had been feeling weak lately. From that day on, she decided to treat him kindly, and her attitude toward him changed completely. The next morning, they went down to the park for a walk together. On the way, they ran into Shu and her granddaughter, and they all agreed to go out together the following day. Though Min said she was busy with work, her friend persuaded her to come along. She spent the entire night preparing the food they would take to the park, and by morning, she was truly happy at last, finally leaving the house after such a long period of isolation. The four of them sat together enjoying their meal, full of joy, taking lovely photos from above. When they returned home, Min began treating Kasuda as if he were her own grandson, sharing with him lessons from her long years of experience. The most important thing she taught him was to say no when something could harm him, never to please others at the expense of himself, and to cherish every single moment of his life. He began to live his youth before growing old and becoming like her. He started following her advice and felt that his life had changed. He now had free time he could use to do something meaningful for himself. Until one day, his friend Doi called him to borrow money once again. But this time, he finally argued with him and said, "Give me back the money I lent you the first time." As for the old lady, she used to keep her money and savings in a metal box. After a while, she went to visit her friend and found her sitting alone, staring at pictures of her children when they were young. So she said to her, "Forget about those pictures. I brought you something that'll make you lick your fingers." When she returned home, she saw Noah coming out of her room. Terrified, she asked him, "What are you doing there?" He replied, "I was cleaning the house, and I even cleaned your room." She rushed inside to check on the box where she kept her savings, but to her shock, it was gone. She became furious and assumed he had stolen it. When she went to his room, both of them were stunned. He tried to convince her that it was the first time he had ever seen that box in the house, but she didn't believe him and threw him out. He went down to the garden, sat there angrily, unable to comprehend what was happening. Then he remembered that on the day his friend Doi came over, he had seen the house's door code. Maybe he had sneaked in when they weren't home. He rushed inside and followed him until he found him. As soon as Doi saw him, he tried to run away, but he caught him and beat him severely. Then Doi confessed that he was the one who had stolen the old lady's money, and that he would have gone to jail if he hadn't returned the money he had scammed from people in the market. He grabbed him by the collar and took him to the old lady so he could confess everything. They both asked her for forgiveness, then went out together to sit in a bar. Doi began drinking and told his friend about the day they left the orphanage, when they both left the children's home at the age of 20 and had to depend on themselves. Back then, he thought the $500 he had been given would be enough to live on, but he didn't realize that money would vanish in rent, leaving him homeless. He always said to him, "I never succeeded like you did. At least you found your way." And I told him, "This is the easiest way to win people's love. I don't have a family that loves me, so I treat people kindly so that they'll love me. It makes me feel like they're my family." He admitted that when he graduated, he thought the bullying would end, but he was shocked to see that his friends still mocked him whenever they talked about their families, taunting him for being an orphan. After drinking heavily, he returned to the university and began telling his classmates that he had grown up in an orphanage and had no parents. But they stood by him until he sobered up, handed him a cup of coffee, and started talking with him about it. They comforted him and said, "It's not your fault that you had no parents and grew up in an orphanage. You're a man because you made it on your own." While he was sitting with them, he heard that Miss Seal had passed away. He went straight to her funeral, where he found the old lady's friend devastated. The next day, Seal's children came and turned the house upside down, looking for something valuable to sell. They were angry because she hadn't given them her money before she died, and they started fighting and rummaging through everything. At that moment, the cleaning workers told them, "If you don't want anything, take what you need, because we'll burn everything afterward." But her children didn't want anything except the money. They said, "Burn everything." The old lady stepped in and said, "Are you serious? This album was precious to your mother. You should keep it as a memory." But her son pushed her, knocking her to the ground, and said, "We don't want anything." When the album fell open, the check she had hidden in its back cover was revealed. At that same moment, Han was packing his books and belongings to leave the house. He saw the old lady sitting there, talking to herself. She told him that her family had gone through severe poverty, which made her decide to travel to Germany for work. She worked there and started earning a good salary. She met a man she loved deeply, but after some time, she discovered that he was married and had a daughter. When she found out the truth, she confronted him and left him. She said she decided to return to her family and leave that country behind. But her father wasted all her money on alcohol and women, and her mother fell into depression and died. She said, "My whole world collapsed. I even thought about ending my life one day, but I was too afraid. Since then, I've lived alone, carrying a deep distrust of men." Han sat beside her and began telling his story. "At least you lived with your parents, even if they were bad. As for me, I was left at the door of a church as a baby. I have no name, no birth date. I grew up in the orphanage with a name they chose for me, and even my birthday is the day I was found in front of that church." The old lady fell silent, astonished, then said to him, "What do you think about living together as a family? From this day on, I'll be your grandmother." Days passed, and the association held a small celebration to announce the formation of the first family in this community. They signed the family certificate. At last, they lived together as a family. Their lives transformed from sadness and loneliness to joy and warmth. Every day, she organized her time and went to visit children living in orphanages. A few days later, she gathered all her savings, deposited them in the bank, and donated them to everyone living in shelters. And here we reach the end of the story. Subscribe for more.